Vanatar was finding the pain intolerable. The air around the small party was now a murky orange and filled with little particles of smouldering ash. For a moment he had dropped the protective shield he had constructed around himself and Alia, and the single breath he had taken had shocked his lungs. "Stop! Koga!"
"Why, we stop,"
said the solitary Giak who had mastered some lending.
"I'm not made for this environment."
Sweat was pouring from all parts of his body.
"Tagdok,"
suggested one of the other Giaks.
"Guga Akamaz."
Vanatar had little desire to be fed to a doom wolf, and summoned up resources he'd never known he had in order to incinerate the mutterer.
"We stop because I say so. Your air is not good for me to breathe. I must make magic so that I can breathe your air. Magic hurts. Magic make pain go all through my body. I need your help." "Why should we give you our help?"
Vanatar gestured at the smoking ruins of the Giak which he had just destroyed, and the point was well taken. If the other members of the patrol did not assist them, he was doomed. But before he died, they too would be dead.
"There is a potion. It stop pain."
"What potion? Do you have any with you?"
"It good potion. It keep some lending alive long time after they should die. They able watch as we eat their flesh."
The Giak swiftly translated this for the benefit of his companions, and they responded with a malodorous cackle of approval. Vanatar thought swiftly. If this Giak were telling the truth, then his immediate problem was solved. More importantly, though, if he could gain access to sufficient supplies of the potion, he would become virtually invincible. The great hindrance to the efforts of the Brotherhood had always been that the human body can stand only so much pain. If he were numbed to that pain, he could perform feats of magic undreamt of by his rivals.
"Can I trust you?" "You must."
A Giak's sincerity was as worthless as a boat on dry land, yet the stakes were high.
"I will trust you."
The Giak dug into one of the pockets of his studded tunic. His sharp little fangs clattered as he forced himself to concentrate on what he was looking for. Finally he found it, a tiny phial encrusted with green mold.
"This the potion,"
he said triumphantly, advancing towards Vanatar.
"May I give you?"
"Yes." Without knowing quite why, he added, "Friend." The Giak smiled, and Vanatar fought back panic. Was this a smile of unity, or was it a grin of devious glee? Still, there was no time for second thoughts. If this were a poison, he would die, but then he would soon die anyway without something to bolster his protective shield. He had to take a chance. He took the phial from the Giak's outstretched claws.
"You drink not too much, or fall dead."
Vanatar pulled out the stopper, and slimy brown smoke poured from the phial's neck.
"I drink this?" "Yes, you drink. Looks good, ripe."
The magician looked around him. If these were his last moments, he could think of better places to die. The grey ash of the barren plains swirled uneasily in rheumatic hot winds. The orange of the sky crouched over him like a predator. In the far distance, he could see a volcano belch its lava and choking gases high into the dismal air. He smelled the phial and recoiled. But then he closed his eyes and swigged half a mouthful of its contents. Astonishingly, the liquid tasted of strawberries. Within a few seconds, the pain vanished from his body. He was conscious he was still using his energies to keep the shield in place, yet the sensation which had once been pain was now vaguely pleasurable.
"Thank you. You have been honest with me. I shall remember this."
He tucked the phial away in his robe. "Now, let's make the best speed we can to reach Karg and your master, Zargana." The Giak grinned again, and this time Vanatar did not find the sight quite so revolting as before.
"We friends."
"That's right. We friends." The little band wended its way through the dour plains of the Darklands. From time to time, Vanatar dozed off on Alia's back, knowing that now that the Giaks had subordinated themselves to a new leader, he was safe from treachery. The creatures seemed to need no sleep, and even when darkness fell, although it was difficult to tell when this was because the light was murky enough at noon, they plodded on. It was on the second morning, according to Vonatar's calculations, that a couple of winged creatures flew through the orange haze to land beside the party. Although he had never seen one before, he recognized these as Zlanbeast. They looked at him with beady, semi-reptilian eyes and chatted in a high, chirping language which he couldn't understand. The leading Giak, his friend, turned after a while to explain. "They say you, Ogardak, must gauge." It took a moment before Vonatar remembered the meaning of gauge. Then he sat upright in the saddle. The Zlanbeast wanted him to die. He contemplated killing one of them to demonstrate his powers, but decided against. The Zlanbeast shuffled together, obviously ill at ease on the dusty ground. Vonatar's friend interrupted their conversation, speaking in their own language. They argued with him for a while, but eventually seemed to concede. The Giak turned to explain. "I tell Zlanbeast, you have news for Zargana. I tell Zlanbeast, take us to Karg. We ride in skies, much quick. They say, take us, Karg, then Zargana. Order us, eat by Zlanbeast." The Giak looked terrified. His leathery, greyish-green face had paled until it was almost white. Vonatar looked around the dismal landscape and realized how tired he was. Tired of riding after all these hours, tired of the tedium of endless swathes of dusty greyness, tired of the orange light that made him blink and wink despite his every magical attempt to alter his vision. If these hideous creatures could carry him swiftly to Karg to meet with Zargana, then his journey would be shortened by days. Moreover, at their current pace it seemed doubtful if he and the Giaks would reach Karg before Fehmarn. "Tell them I will agree to go with them to Karg," he said, "but tell them also of my powers of right-handed magic." The Giak chattered briefly, and the Zlanbeast responded. "I tell them," the Giak explained in due course, "that you, me, both go Karg. I help you." Vonatar nodded, and the Giak understood his gesture. The magician slipped from Alia's back. "What of the rest of these?" He waved his hand to encompass Alia and the remainder of the Giaks. "Oh, they eat horse. Maybe all die." The Giak shrugged in a curiously human way. Vonatar had little interest in the fate of the Giaks, but he was concerned about Alia. He touched a hand to her forehead. "Alia, the time to come will be very frightening for you. Don't give up hope." He petted her mane, and then he created a left-handed thought and sent it down his arm and into the mare. Alia shrank, slowly at first, but then more rapidly. She began to whinny in terror when she was the size of a wolf. She was still bellowing in terror when the shrinking stopped. Very gently, Vonatar reached down and plucked from the dust an animal that was no larger than a mouse. She kicked a bit against his hand, but he picked her up and put her in the relative security of one of the pockets of his robe. For a few moments the tiny horse struggled, but then, in the darkness, she toppled into a long-needed sleep. "I am prepared for the journey." The Giak clearly didn't recognize the fact that Vonatar had doubts. He beckoned one of the Zlanbeasts to come forward and swiftly climbed onto its back. Hesitation might prove fatal, Vonatar realized. He strode purposefully towards the other Zlanbeast and leapt astride it. Its back was bony and uncomfortable, but he pretended not to notice. "To Karg! To Karg!" the Giak repeated dutifully. Moments later they were airborne. For the first few seconds, Vonatar's mind was a mass of terror as the ground receded beneath them. The little party of Giaks stood in a circle, watching as the Zlanbeast and their riders grew smaller and smaller against the flaccid sky. Vonatar clutched the slime-encrusted scaliness of his Zlanbeast neck and closed his eyes. He could feel the pulsing of the creature's great wings as it drove swiftly through the air. Up here, some thousands of feet above the desolation of the Darklands, he could see the blight which the Dark Lords had created in what had once been green and fertile land. Behind him, the Derncrag Range loomed. Below, volcanoes spat their venom skyward. It was their light and the gases they emitted that colored the air orange. In every direction, as far as the eye could see, there was nothing but the bleakness and dustiness of the barren plain, punctuated only by mountains which disgorged flame and fury. He saw that the lips of his friend were drawn back in a caricature of ecstasy. Clearly, Giaks were rarely allowed to enjoy the pleasures of sky riding, and this one was experiencing an infrequent exhilaration. The flight seemed to last forever, but it was still not yet noon when the two Zlanbeast came to rest in front of the great gates of Karg. They chirped to the Giak, and he translated. Zlanbeast think now they eat us. They let Zargana master decide. Vonotar could hardly believe the size of the fortress. It seemed to be too large to exist, let alone to have been constructed by creatures as vile and expendable as the squat Giaks. The mere presence of the place dragged him towards it. He climbed down from the Zlanbeast he had been riding and stumbled through the ash and dust towards the gates. As an afterthought, he beckoned the Giak to follow him. The Zlanbeast chattered urgently. Their pipings produced a response, for the great gates slowly began to open. Accompanied by his friend, Vonotar entered Karg. Zargana strode through one of Karg's gloomy corridors. As he walked, he spoke to the crowd of anxious Drakarim who scuttled in his wake.
I care nothing for your arguments, and nothing for you yourselves. You harbored a traitor among you.
The party was briefly lit up as it passed one of the blazing torches set into the corridor wall. The next seemed a very long way ahead.
The traitor is dead now, and I'm told his death was worse than the worst of nightmares. Yet imagine if he had escaped.
The attendant Drakarim were doing their very best not to imagine anything at that moment, and so Zargana's rhetorical question lost much of its impact. Zargana answered his own question.
By now he could have been beyond the Derncrags, blabbing all our secrets to the Kai, to the Brotherhood of the Crystal Star, or even to the King. What do you think your lives would be worth if they knew how short of weaponry we are?
Zargana paced past a slit window, and the orange light glinted eerily on his blue-green hide.
And how are we to know that there was only the one traitor among you? For all I can tell, even now one of you may be listening to all that I say and remembering it, and plotting to flee to Sommerlund and tell everything you know.
The Drakarim looked at each other, desperately seeking out signs of treason.
There's only one solution,
said Zargana just as he came to a great door of polished granite. He stood aside and ushered the Drakarim into the dark room beyond.
A final solution,
said the Dark Lord, slamming the door behind them. Even through the granite, he could hear the screams of the Drakarim as the hungry crypt spawn fluttered down from the vaulted ceiling of the cavernous theater. He waited for a moment, listening with pleasure, and then went on his way. He had more urgent things to do than indulge himself. If there was treachery even within Karg itself, then he must move swiftly. Sommerlund must be conquered this summer before it had time to erect sufficient defenses. He moved swiftly back along the corridor. Another Drakar was unfortunate enough to be coming in the opposite direction.